Hey you. I'm about to put you on some crazy stuff right here. You ever heard of a little guy called MF Doom? I mean, yeah, but at this point you definitely have. But before all the memes and the reputation that his music scares all the hoes away, he wasn't as widely known as he is now. Where he was better known was amongst other people who also made music. Like these guys. So much so that Doom had earned the nickname your favorite rapper's favorite rapper. And I always thought that was really neat. The fact that there was an artist that isn't particularly well known themselves, but managed to inspire so many other more popular artists. And that got me thinking, what other pieces of media aren't as well known as what they inspired? Who was the visionary that inspired so many of our beloved TV shows and movies?
Commit suicide.
Twin Peaks. What did it inspire? Fucking everything and everyone. After watching David Lynch's magnum opus, it's hard not to see its influence in so many things. From media that takes subtle hints from Lynch's playbook to huge references and recreations of scenes, I want to go through some of the things that Twin Peaks both directly and subtly inspired, because this list is honestly massive. But before we get into the coffee and cherry pie of it all, we need context. But not too much, just like 2 minutes worth. Twin Peaks premiered in April of 1990, written and directed by David Lynch and Mark Frost. David Lynch gets most of the credit for Twin Peaks, but to keep it real with you, this show would be entirely incomprehensible without Mark Frost. I love you, David, but have you seen his goddamn PS2 commercials?
What the fuck wrong with you?
Twin Peaks starts off with the discovery of a young girl's body, Laura Palmer. She was the type of girl who had a bright future and a smile that could light up the whole room, so she was bound to get murked. The same day Laura's body was found, another girl of a similar age named Ronette Pulaski was discovered wandering around outside, injured and in a state of shock. With the possibility that these two cases could be related, Special Agent of the FBI and corked up white boy Dale Cooper is sent in to investigate. So it's like a simple murder mystery type of show, right? Shut your mouth right now. There is no such thing as simple with David Lynch. Twin Peaks is a show with a deceptively simple setup, but quickly becomes one of the most mind-bending, surrealist things I've ever seen. The series can jump back and forth between being extremely unnerving to dangerous levels of silly. Until it came onto the scene in the 90s, there was really nothing like Twin Peaks. And even today, after there have been countless pieces of media inspired by it, there still really isn't anything like it.
We have to go back!
First up on our list is a show that was once incredibly popular, but has now basically faded from the mainstream zeitgeist. Lost. Love it or hate it, but you better love it. Lost was heavily inspired by Twin Peaks. While the two shows seem incredibly different from one another on the surface, it doesn't take long to start noticing that Twin Peaks had a part to play in the structure of Lost. If you haven't seen it, Lost is a story about a plane crash that leads to the survivors being stranded on an island that harbors an immense amount of mysteries. The show follows a ridiculously large cast as they try to wrap their heads around the weird shit happening on the island, while also discovering and accepting parts of themselves. Twin Peaks revolved around the eerie and confusing death of Laura Palmer, where the truth is uncovered through strange events, characters, and circumstances. Lost is no different. While there really isn't a central mystery, you can see the entire island as the mystery. Why is this island here? Why is it so hard to leave? Why is it able to somehow heal people's very serious health problems? All these questions are also used to push the characters into learning more about themselves, and even questioning the way they used to view life. A bit of a spoiler here, but there is a specific aspect from Lost I would like to talk about. As the show goes on, we learn more and more about a mysterious man named Jacob. He is someone who apparently controls the island. His main goal is to keep the man in black imprisoned on the island to avoid him enveloping the world in his evil. This is very much in line with Twin Peaks, a show about keeping the evil of the world at bay so that the light can shine through. If that isn't enough to convince you, the showrunner Damon Lindelof's favorite show is Twin Peaks, and he has said that Twin Peaks was a major inspiration for Lost.
Do I look like your girlfriend?
Anybody who's both a fan of Twin Peaks and Silent Hill know with 1000% certainty that Lynch's creative influence inspired this game heavily. Like, really heavily. So much so that they made James in the remake look like a damn Walmart version of David Lynch. The similarities are still really obvious for those who know to look for them. Spooky small town, doppelgangers, surrealist imagery, a narrative told in a purposely misleading way, a bitch named Laura. There are clear similarities between the two, but the inspiration seen in Silent Hill is way more subtle than it is outward. While you could argue that Silent Hill is more inspired by David Lynch's craziness rather than Twin Peaks itself, I still believe Twin Peaks was an inspiration for Silent Hill. But instead of making something similar in terms of structure like Lost, it takes the backdrop of this small town and fills it with the more surrealist and freaky aspects of Twin Peaks. It's hard to put into words exactly, but things inspired by David Lynch just have a specific feel to them. Hell, that's why we use the word Lynchian. Silent Hill 2 has got to be one of the most Lynchian games there is. Well, that and... Besides Deadly Premonition, Alan Wake is so heavily inspired by Twin Peaks that it somehow managed to accidentally guess the events of Twin Peaks: The Return well before it was released.
He copied my whole fucking flow! Word for word, bar for bar!
But before I get into that, let me explain this game that finally got a sequel after a grueling 13 years. Alan Wake tells a story of an author by the name of Alan Wake, who goes to Bright Falls in the Pacific Northwest for a vacation with his wife. He's in a bit of a creative drought, and his wife tries to get him to see a therapist that specializes in helping creative minds regain their drive and passion. This leads to a mind-numbing adventure that sends Alan through a dizzying number of surreal and sometimes unexplainable events that transcend well beyond the real world. From the location to the wacky cast to the unearthly circumstances, Alan Wake is a tried and true member of the Twin Peaks Inspiration Club. Characters are eccentric and sometimes weird. The plot starts off simple but becomes this mind-bending narrative as the story progresses. The idea of darkness enveloping the world and having a beacon of light drive it out is one of the main themes, just like in Twin Peaks. Also helps that Sam Lake said himself that they did take elements from Twin Peaks when they made the game.
Already tapping into ideas of Stephen King novels and Twin Peaks.
There is something I need to mention about Alan Wake because no other piece of media on this list has done this. This is spoilers for Alan Wake 1 and the AWE Control DLC. Alan Wake is about Alan trying to stop his evil doppelganger from escaping the dark place and wreaking havoc on the world. This is the very plot of Twin Peaks: The Return. Alan is also writing a story in the game that is literally titled Return. Alan Wake, a game about a man writing a story that changes events in the real world, writes a story that leads to the show that inspired it to have a similar story and a very similar title for its third season. I am almost certain that David Lynch did not play Alan Wake, but it's very fitting and somewhat eerie that it managed to accurately guess what The Return would be about and what the title would be.
Fuck you, Lori.
On a genuine note, please watch The Leftovers as soon as you possibly can. Regardless if you're a Twin Peaks fan or a David Lynch head, I talked about The Leftovers a while ago and probably still will make its own dedicated video. Just like Lost, The Leftovers was written by Damon Lindelof, and also like Lost, it's got a heavy dose of Twin Peaks in its DNA. You'll notice that a lot with Twin Peaks fans. They never seem to shut up about it. Ever. I've already given a brief rundown of The Leftovers in the other video I mentioned, but I know approximately 5 people have seen this show, so I'll go through it again. 2% of Earth's population vanishes off the face of the planet. Nobody knows where they went, and it's impossible to figure out even after all these years. Oh, my loved ones are missing. Oh, my complex and layered emotions resulting from inexplicable events. Then bam! Penis jump scare. The Leftovers wasted no time getting into the surrealist aspects of the show. Surrealist aspects that are very similar to the ones we see in Twin Peaks. One of my favorites being when shit just kinda happens. In both shows, we'll see some seemingly random event happen out of nowhere, and we're just left to our own interpretations of what it's supposed to mean. Scenes like this are all over the place in Twin Peaks.
Warm milk.
But things start to go into actual turbo crazy mode in the second season. Without spoiling too much, our main character Kevin Garvey gets sent to this place where everything has some sort of secondary meaning. It's a hotel, but instead of getting free Eggo waffles, shit like this happens. People seem to act irrationally and cryptic, until you realize that everything they say and do has a secondary meaning. This shares a direct correlation with the Black Lodge in Twin Peaks, a space seemingly outside of reality, where everything is coded in double meanings. The Black Lodge has to be one of the most memorable and unique parts of Twin Peaks. It's referenced at least once in every piece of media. That's just the law of nature. The Leftovers takes it to another level though, by incorporating the themes and emotions of the Black Lodge and expanding on them thoroughly. This is your last warning. watch The Leftovers. I am no longer asking.
How much?
Nothing really. Just let me see you two kiss.
I'm sorry?
Other than Donald Glover literally saying that he wanted Atlanta to be Twin Peaks but with rappers, there's a clear similarity between the two, mainly in just the general vibe of the show. While I haven't seen all of it yet, the finals just came out, okay, please give me a break. As a Twin Peaks fan, you can clearly feel David Lynch's gooey aura smothered all over the show. What a fucking line. The main inspiration comes in the form of the setting, I feel. Both Twin Peaks and Atlanta take place in a grounded setting. The viewer can clearly tell that these places exist within our understanding of reality. But then it doesn't. In both settings, there's a sense that this isn't actually a reality that we're used to. Even more so than something like The Leftovers, Atlanta and Twin Peaks both share this atmosphere of something being off. There's a plethora of scenes like this throughout the show, way too many to count honestly. But one of my favorites has to be in the very first episode where Ern is taking the bus, and this dude sitting across from him offers Ern some life advice. This is then immediately followed by him offering Ern a Nutella sandwich, and then exiting the bus into the woods, along with a dog. Honestly, this type of stuff isn't all that uncommon to see on public transit. If you want to see a better, more in-depth look at why Atlanta feels so otherworldly, check out Thomas Flight's video on the show. That dude actually knows how to explain complex themes without chroma keying something in every 5 minutes. This show has not left my mind ever since I first watched it, and I watched all 3 seasons and Fire Walk with Me. It's imprinted itself onto my brain, and the more I try to push it away, the more it fights back against me. It's a feeling that I've had such a hard time describing, even to myself. It's no wonder that Twin Peaks has inspired so many creative and talented people. I highly recommend you watch it and try out everything else we mentioned on this list if you end up liking the show. Despite however it may leave you, in my opinion, it's still worth watching just for the fact that you'll notice its influence in pretty much everything else you watch. The same could be said for pretty much everything David Lynch has worked on. Seeing where other creatives got their inspiration is a great way to jumpstart your own ideas. Just make sure you actually remember your ideas.
And if you forget a good idea, you want to commit suicide.